Hey everybody, welcome to Shooting the Shit with Yankee. As always, I'm Yankee, so let's start shooting. Today's question is a simple one. Have you ever negligently discharged? With a firearm, of course. Have you ever had an ND with a handgun, rifle, whatever? And I'm a person that believes if you're someone that says, I've been around guns my whole life, and you're of any substantial age whatsoever, and you claim you've never had an ND, well, I'm going to say you're a liar. Either you're lying about ever having an ND, or you're lying about how much you've been around guns. I don't think you've lived your life with guns as much as you think you have if you've never had an ND. I think they're kind of inevitable if you handle a gun long enough, which is why the rules exist, the 4 rules of safety. Because even though I've had NDs in my life, because I was following the other rules, no one got seriously injured. So I'm going to start us rolling tonight with one of my stories of an ND. I think a lot of people know that I had a hang fire, which isn't technically an ND, but the way I reacted to it was because I clicked it, didn't go off. What do I do immediately? Take my headgear off, take my hearing protection off. And as I'm taking my hearing protection off, bang! I blew my eardrum out. So that was not a good thing to do, but luckily I didn't pull the trigger again where it hit the frame of the gun or anything. But as I said, I've had a couple in my life, but I'm going to say the one that scared me the most, the one that I was literally in fear for my well-being, was I was probably about 11 years old. I was on the bed in my bedroom, and I was, wiping down my rifle, my little 22. Keeping it good and clean. I like it to be nice and clean and shiny. I've always been a little OCD about that. And I've got it sitting next to me, and I'm like, looking at it and blah, blah, blah. And bang, I shoot right through the ceiling. And I was terrified because my mother would kill me if she knew. So first thing I thought is, oh my God, this went all the way through. We're going to have a leak in the roof. She's going to have to call maintenance because we lived in low income housing at the time. So I'm like, she's got to call the maintenance company. They're going to fix the roof. She's going to know what happened. I'm going to be in so much trouble. So first thing I do is I crawl out on the house. I get up on the roof. One side of the apartment was lower, so you could get up on it and climb up onto the roof. So I got up there, nothing up above, no broken shingles, nothing. So I'm like, seems like I got lucky. The bullet either hit a cross member or something up above, one of the ceiling joist or roofing trusses. So didn't go anywhere other than through the drywall of my roof. So I was like, oh, we got some plaster downstairs. I know we do. So I went, got some plaster. I wasn't my plaster. It wasn't in our house. I knew that the guy at the end of the maintenance guy at the end of our building had plaster because I had seen it before. So I said, hey, can I have a little plaster? And he said, what for? And I made up a reason, like something for school. I took he gave it to me in a little plastic Dixie cup. So I go over with a little Dixie cup and I take a butter knife and I patch the little hole in the roof. And luckily the white plaster dried to the exact color of the roof. You could never see it was there if you didn't know it was there. So I got away with it, never got in trouble, but that was terrifying for me. But now let's move on to you guys. Let's see what you got to say. If anybody over there has had an ND. And like I said, I'm not one to know the reason you had to get married or the reason you had your first child. This is all about firearms. Johnny Mandrick says, yes, when I had the CZ Checkmate, I had a couple of cases of bang, bang when I meant to bang. Yeah, I've done that before. I've even had that happen with a single action, because my thumb was working faster than my brain, cocking the hammer, and I cocked, bang, cock, and then went to draw back and bang, shot straight up in the air. Luckily, it was an outdoor range that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, so we didn't have much risk of hurting anybody, but it was a stupid thing to do. John Heasley said, yes, with a 40 Smith & Wesson in the palm of my hand, blew my palm apart. Well, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. That's ow. That's why you don't barrel your gun at anything like your hand or your nuts or your femoral artery, because of that right there. Ouch. Now my hand hurts. Practical Bacon said, of course, it happens to everyone. If you say you haven't had, then you are either lying or you don't handle guns much. I agree. That's my position too. Although you could have told us what you did. Go Shadow says, Is it ND if a hang fire fires after you eject it? No, that's actually, not that bad. I mean, you probably should wait for a few seconds, see if it fires while still in the gun, while keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction. But if you eject it, the only bad thing is if it goes off as you're ejecting it, that can cause serious injury and damage to the gun. But if it's already out of the gun and it pops, it's like what, M80 going off something? It's not even that big deal. Mr. Furley says, yes, my 406 and 5906 mag safeties suck. What? I'm not sure how the mag safety caused you to have an ND, but I'm sure that there's a way it could. Sean Bain says, got a glove stuck into a 1911 commander size at the public outdoor range. Oh, yeah. I've seen that happen before. People going to set their gun down and let go of it. And bang! I've seen a 1911 go whoo back onto the concrete because of that. So consider yourself lucky if you didn't damage your gun or shoot nobody. Fired Goozy said 2 MDs. First was a bolt action 30-06 in my bedroom after unloading it. That was what I imagine it's like to set a flashbang grenade off on top of your head. Second was a 9mm while distracted by a call. Yeah, the gun in a bedroom. I'm just glad mine was just a 22. And luckily, I was, I think, the only person home when it happened. If my brother's been there, they'd ratted on me. My sister wouldn't have ratted on me if she'd been there, but she used it against me. But my brothers would have ratted because they were younger. And my mom would have heard it and freaked out. But luckily, I was the only one home. I think I had pretended I wasn't feeling good so that I didn't have to go to church, was why I was the only one home. Because I hated fucking church. David Ford, Beretta 90. I think I had actually thrown up that morning, and that was the only way I got ready to wait. That I was able to stay home from church. But I felt better after I threw up. David Ford said Beretta 92D models are underrated. The trigger is even better because there's no hammer spur. That's why Phil recommended it to me. Phil on that. Trust Phil on that. Well, that ain't got nothing to do with today's topic, but does get you an entry into the drawing. Heavy J, I want one of the Berettas with the hammerless, with the spurless hammer. I don't have a single one like that, but I keep wanting one. We'll talk about that later. I'll try to remember to come back to that. Heavy J, slam fire a Bryco, another with a double hammer coach gun, learning how to uncock the hammer, but slipped. Yeah, that can happen. That's why I got a clearing bucket right there for whenever I have to uncock something, or even when I decock something, if it's loaded. Like if I load up a gun and I decock it to put it in my holster, I do it over my bucket in here, or I do it somewhere outside where I can point it at the ground. Not Action 22 cheap ammo slam fire. Yep. I don't know what that part is. Edgar Cortez said, unfortunately, yes, with the Sig Sauer C3 at the firing range, damn 3-pound trigger and my stupidity, fortunately, no injuries. I shot the ground with a 45 round. Little light triggers can cause that. Who's lightweight triggers? I didn't even have that excuse with my rifle. I just pulled the trigger thinking it was unloaded. I just cleaned it and, thought it was unloaded. It was not. Heavy J says, if you never ND, then pay the tithe. Yeah, you better, because Phil's been looking out for you. You ought to pay your tithe. Gummy Wuzzle says, not from a gun barrel, but technically, yes. Well, I don't think how that could be true if it's not from the gun barrel. I think that's kind of required. But as I was saying, we got one more person weighing in here, and it's Chunky D. Chunky D says, yes, it happened at a reenactment. Luckily, it was pointing up in the air. Y'all have real ammo at a reenactment? Good God. I mean, never play with you guys. You guys crazy. But that looks like that's going to do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for weighing in. For the ones of you that were honest enough to admit it. I'm sure a lot of you out there either aren't admitting it or Just haven't been around guns as much as you think you have. So, but how about you all out there in YouTube land? Let us know in the comment section below. Have you ever had a negligent discharge with a firearm? Let others learn from your mistakes. So let us know in the comment section. And if you want to weigh in on one of these topics in person, come on into our live chat. It's every night at 6 p.m. except for Wednesdays, when who the fuck knows when it's going to be on a Wednesday, because there's never enough ammo. So come on in, weigh in on one of these topics live and in person. Stick around for the after chat where we have open chat, or maybe even be on the No FUD Zone Jerk Circle. Feel free, come on in. With that being said, thanks to everyone who participated. I hope to see you again tomorrow. Until then, remember, always carry and stay safe until I see you again.